Hello, you're watching news from Kazakhstan. I'm Askar Sharaliyev, and here are the headlines. Former management of Land Resources Agency is on trial in Astana. State officials are accused of corruption while preparing the sea chart of the Caspian Sea. Closing entries wrong, instead rules must be changed. Public activists advise authorities to revise the registration regulations for incoming citizens in Almaty. Kazakhstan agrarian students learned how to grow their own oranges and tangerines and are ready to introduce a new variety of fruits. The main military prosecution voiced the possible reasons of suicide of the NSC General Talgat Yesetov on Tuesday. The tense emotional state caused by suspicions and abuse of office is among the leads. This is mentioned in the conclusion of experts. The investigation is currently working on finding whether the general was receiving bribes from the Ukrainian company for contracts on maintenance of aircrafts. Which one exactly is not being specified. However, it has nothing to do with AN-72 crash that killed the top officials of the Border Patrol Agency. However, it seems that different leads are just gaining momentum.
Kazakhstan's General Prosecutor's Office released the main official version explaining Major General Talgat Yesetov's suicide. According to the investigation, the suicide was driven by the intense emotional state caused by the suspicions and power abuse. The National Security Committee of Kazakhstan is looking into the criminal case on charges of illegal misuse of authority by officials of the Border Patrol Agency during the organization of repairs and maintenance of its air fleet. The investigation is currently verifying the information on the involvement of former and current top officials within the Border Patrol Agency, including Talgat Yesetov, in accepting bribes from representatives of Ukrainian enterprises. There appears to be a direct link with the crash of AN-72, which had almost entire border service management on board. On February 5th, 2 employees of a Ukrainian company dealing with export and import of military equipment were detained in suspicion of bribing Kazakhstan's officials in the amount of $200,000. The same amount is mentioned in the case of Major General Almas Asenov, the head of the Armed Forces Ordnance Bureau, currently under arrest, although the 2 cases are not officially related. Askar Sharaliyev, the head of the Veterans Council, shared his view on the situation. Many things may happen at the border, including smuggling of goods and other valuables. I think that a thorough investigation needs to be carried out in the light of recent events at the border. The prosecutor's office also needs to be involved, revealing the facts, as we will be waiting for the results of the investigation and can only make assumptions now. Still, there is no smoke without fire. Other possible reasons for Talgat Yesetov's suicide are actively discussed by the general public. One is a family dispute, which is somewhat confirmed by Yesetov's sister Gaukhar. I'm certain that the accident has nothing to do with it. There was a different reason. He was very distressed over the crash. He said he felt sorry for the guys. He never even thought he could be linked with the crash. We knew that he was an honest and straightforward man. While the investigation is underway, the topic is being hyped in the media and through social networks. This is not surprising, given that the border service has been going from one trouble to another for half a year already.
Former head of the Agency for Land Resources Management, Umirzak Uzbekov, and his deputy refute accusations and charges of embezzlement of almost $7 million from the state budget. They made their statement in Astana court. The trial took off on Monday. The case is led by Miram Zhangutinov, who is also known for working on the corruption case of the former health minister Zhaksylik Doskaliyev. The jury of the Caspian Sea chart trial was already selected, several petitions satisfied. In particular, the judge left unchanged the measure of restraint to Uzbekov's deputy. More details from Astana in the next report.
Umirzak Uzbekov, the former chairman of the Land Resources Management Agency, arrived to the court on the day of his trial straight from his house. He seemed very calm and made no comments regarding the charges against him. The attorney will comment. Last summer, the media was promised that this will be an open trial. However, no cameramen were allowed in the courtroom on Tuesday, as insisted by the defendant's party. 65-year-old Umirzak Uzbekov, along with 2 of his deputies, Amangildy Zhampiisov and Bakatbek Nakibekov, are charged with embezzlement of nearly $6.6 million. These assets have been allocated from the state budget during 4 years for the various surveying purposes, including the development of marine chart of Kazakhstan sector of Caspian Sea. In fact, the head of one of the departments of the agency, Maral Sagandyk, and ex-director of Kaz Geodosia, Kadulbek Kaimbekov, may be sentenced as well. The defendant Uzbekov, please answer this question. Do you plead guilty? No, I don't. The investigators insist that, in addition to the usual schemes of money laundering, including a double payment against the invoice, transactions via fraud companies, Uzbekov and his associates have committed other violations. According to the prosecutor, the defendants had the so-called ghost employees on payroll, and their closest relatives held certain positions. For instance, Uzbekov's daughter-in-law and her father earned a total of almost $50,000. According to specialized inter-district court officials, the trial will be taking place every day with 12 jury.
MPs believe that state budget allocates little money for their operations. According to them, the current parliament is less costly as opposed to other parliaments of post-Soviet states. Moreover, some MPs questioned the data provided by the Accounting Committee. To recap, the budget of the legislative body takes $67 million of taxpayers' money annually. How justified is that? Find out from the next report.
According to the Accounts Committee, $67 million are allocated annually for procurement of furniture, office equipment, stationery and new cars for the parliament members. Around $1 million of the budget surplus was spent for bonuses and travel allowances for the Kazakh deputies. Over the past 2 years, 227 executive-class vehicles were purchased for the parliament needs. In 2013, the governmental automotive fleet has been augmented with 28 luxury cars at a total price of $1.3 million. Another deputy-related expenditure item is maintenance of vacant elite corporation housing that costs the state treasury almost $6,700 a year. Meanwhile, over $53,000 have been allocated for the servicing 2 access gates and the entrance security point at the Parliament office complex. Nevertheless, some of the party factions still complain of insufficient financing. We get pennies and thus unable to set up decent work. For instance, Nuratan political party used to get around $40 million a year when it was alone in the parliament, while now all 3 parties get around $25 million. This is almost 2 times less than in the past. It ultimately affects the work of party organizations. The Akjol faction leader Azat Piruashov expressed solidarity with the colleagues' grievance. The MP confessed that the party members expected greater budget allotments. Piruashov assumed that financing rollbacks have resulted from switching to a multi-party parliament system.
Мы рассчитывали на более большие суммы, поскольку, скажем...
We hoped for better financing, as in times of a single-party parliament, the government used to allocate threefold the funds for one faction. However, as soon as we switched to a multi-party system, the financing flow distribution was reconsidered. In opposition to the Accounts Committee's implications, the governing party and parliament member Aygul Solovyova claimed the Kazakhstan parliament is the most cost-efficient political structure in the CIS. According to the MP, the average salary of a Kazakh deputy, regardless of party identification, is around $3,000, and the annual allowance for the whole lower chamber of parliament, inclusive of bonuses and travel expenses, doesn't exceed $5.6 million, which pales in comparison to wage levels in the national corporations.
В Киргизии даже депутат, когда уходит, он потом 70% пенсию имеет.
In Kyrgyzstan, the retiring pension for former deputies make as much as 70% of the regular wage. Meanwhile, the Kazakhstan government doesn't provide this kind of retirement benefits for economy reasons. No other parliament in the CIS adopts such a cost-effective approach.
Экономичнее нашего парламента. Вообще ни в одной стране СНГ нету такого дешевого парламента.
The second and third Senate Convocation Deputy Walikhan Kaysarov recalls the senator's modest salary in late 90s equivalent to $200 today. He also regrets that while the level of state financing keeps rising, the quality of the parliament's performance impeccably deteriorates. According to the former senator, the last parliament has turned into a presidential administration department, passing laws with no deliberation.
Они должны подпевать тому, кто заказывает музыку.
The deputies have no choice but dance to the principal's tune. In turn, the wire pullers are trapped by ever-increasing expenses for securing the current political regime.
Главному трубачу приходится все больше и больше платить.
The parliamentary cabinet has undergone 5 major reshuffles since 1995. Now it is mainly formed by the members of the governing party Nuratan, headed by Kazakhstan's president. The experts believe it's the primary reason behind the immense financial inflow, including the budget surplus disbursements, to cover the needs of law-making institution.
Residents of Madanyet village of Kızıldağ region demand the resignation of incumbent managers. People are dissatisfied with the ruling style of the head of the district and the school headmaster. Local residents sharply criticized their professional qualities during the recent meeting. Our reporter witnessed the encounter.
In a similar meeting a year ago, you also carefully listened to me, but it resulted in nothing. Unemployed widower Serik Aitbayev requested the authorities to help his son to find a job and provide the family with a small loan for the development of their farmland. For many years, Aitbayevs managed to make the ends meet thanks to crops from their garden. Unfortunately, coming up with the response, the local government chose to ignore all ethic norms. You're quite worthless and want to put the blame on us. Who will ever hire your son? As he's just a driver, he needs retraining and must major in something else. Only then we'll talk. The situation got out of control fast, and the dissatisfaction with the current situation in the village ignited a wave of protests. The locals demanded to dismiss the head of the village administration and school principal. Understandably, the consensus was not reached later on. Kamalbek Yermakhanov has been the principal of the school for 10 years, while the head of the village administration is occupying his seat for 13. To get jobs for my daughter and daughter-in-law in our school, I gave them a bribe and a cow and a bull, respectively. There are a lot of unemployed people in the village. A young family, for instance, is now dying of hunger with a sick child in their hands. The head of the village administration is not concerned about anything and is not respected in his own village. 10 people personally gave their land shares to Rakhmetov. However, for almost 15 years, we have seen no dividends. When we asked him to return our land, he told us it was all sold at an auction, and it's our problem now to find it. The year-end results meeting between Mediniyet village residents and the head of Zhalash district went as usual. The authorities reported only about the achievements of the district for the last year and headed back home, while the villagers were left on their own with plenty of unresolved issues.
An assembling factory of Toyota Fortuner with a capacity of 3,000 vehicles a year will be set up in Kostanay. This news, however, sounds like an ad if it wasn't Deputy Prime Minister Aset Isakeshev who made the statement.
On Tuesday, representatives of Toyota Motor Corporation and the government of Kazakhstan signed a cooperation memorandum, with Kazakhstan investing over $35 million in the project. Officials say that the new cars will be manufactured locally as early as next year. The Vice Prime Minister, together with the Minister of Trade, are said to be personally responsible for ensuring the quality and affordability of Japanese cars for ordinary Kazakhstan citizens. The Ministry and Kaznex Invest have been negotiating with the Japanese company for more than 2 years. A lot of economic and technical research has been carried out before the decision was finally taken. I think that the quality will be good. The other party will give us the price information later, but I believe all cars manufactured in Kazakhstan will be affordable.
Minister of Agriculture Asuljan Mamutbekov commented on the incidents related to the infected cows from Austria and the loss of cattle in Pavlodar region.
Head of the agency reported that Hungarian supplier company is to reimburse the farmers of northern Kazakhstan region for damage from ill-elite herd of cows. He also confirmed the destruction of 700 tons of cows and 200 tons of calves due to Schmallenberg virus infection. In addition, Mamutbekov said that rumors of a massive loss of livestock in Pavlodar region are exaggerated, referring to it as the result of mismanagement. According to him, 90% of loss comes from 2 particular farms which failed to stock up with fodder in timely manner, and therefore the state will not reimburse for the fallen cattle. Speaking about this famine, I believe it's a bit overrated. Over 500 reported head of cattle hasn't actually been confirmed. During the inspection of animal burials, only half of the number was revealed. The rest of the claimed affected livestock is nowhere to be seen. No trace of remains has been made so far. In fact, it was nothing but an attempt to relocate their responsibility for the loss of livestock on the state.
Pavlodar statisticians voiced their data regarding the mass loss of livestock. They say that they work with real numbers and not with rumors, and thus the talks on the raging loss of livestock in the region are premature. According to their data, just a little over 800 heads of cattle died as a result of bad weather conditions.
As of January, 142 heads of cattle died in the livestock farms, 78 sheep and goats, and 539 horses. 2 weeks ago, farmers from Pavlodar region complained of mass cattle mortality due to unstable weather conditions, leaving little usable pastures. Several households reported the loss of hundreds of horses, furthermore claiming they cannot find the remaining livestock. At the time, officials blamed stock breeders for the losses, with the head of the regional administration going as far as saying he'll set up an investigation to see if the farmers are telling the truth. Erlan Arın proposed to organize a helicopter flyover for the stock inspection and then punish those who deceived the authorities.
Representatives of pension funds believe that President was misled. On Tuesday in Almaty, they organized a press conference raising the question of how the unified savings funds will be better than the private ones. According to them, instead of spending money on the creation of the new system, it would be better to invest into the modernization of the already existing one.
Managers of private pension funds have sent an open letter to the president of Kazakhstan claiming that switching to a single merged pension fund is the country's system error. The transfer of all savings to a single entity is called an outright nationalization, which can potentially scare off the investors. I also believe that the president was misled and perhaps even set up since he wasn't told about all possible risks. Thus, if the president has any questions and wants to clarify the situation, I'm ready to explain him the view of the pension market. Opponents of the merger argue that the process will not increase the efficiency of the system, but rather reduce earnings, creating social tension. The very security of the savings is questioned, while some doubt is cast on the government's proposal to buy out the shares of private pension funds from shareholders, supposedly for compensating their losses. We need to understand what is driving the decision or whether it's politics again. This is similar to the cases with Turanalem and Alliance banks. We need to understand whether it's a political game and a cover-up of something that goes on behind the scenes. Alternatively, this might be some kind of pragmatic decision for the protection of pensioners' rights. For more than 10 years, journalist Yaroslav Razumov paid 10% of his salary to a private pension fund on a monthly basis. But soon there will be no choice but to use the services of the only available state-run organization. The economic analyst doesn't see a point in discussing pros and cons of the proposal, since he doesn't believe he will ever get his savings back in the form of pension payments. Razumov says that it will be either the inflation or something else that will put the pension in jeopardy. Any system of social security, just like everything else, requires a clear forecasting. We cannot really talk about any economic, social and political foresight in our country when no one actually knows what will happen after the inevitable political turnaround. The question of the Unified Pension Fund will remain open until the parliament approves the related bill. Presently, 22 laws and more than 100 of regulations govern the activities of private funds.
Majority of non-native Almaty residents have no residence permits and only 1/4 of them work. On Tuesday, experts discussed the internal migration issues in the country. Find out more details from the next report.
The Shymkent student Alexei Kim is planning to move to Almaty upon graduation. He is convinced that this is his only up-close opportunity to achieve the designer potential, as Alexei's hometown lacks conducive environment for high-scale creativity. It is nearly impossible to achieve any tangible results here. I don't think there are any professional advancement prospects for me in Shymkent. Meanwhile, I do see great career opportunities in Almaty, where I'm planning to move in a couple of weeks. Alexei is going to join the army of internal migrants, which numbers 1 million people in the Almaty alone. The economist Miruet Mahmutova, in cooperation with the Soros Foundation, conducted a survey of 1,000 citizens between the ages of 14 and 29, which revealed that only 30% of the respondents are currently employed and only 12% of them have an official residence permit. More than a half of the surveyed citizens reported a monthly income of less than $360. To stop the migration flow from rural areas of the country to Almaty in search of work and higher salaries, the government should concentrate on improving the standards of living in the outlying regions. Walihan Timirkhanoglu didn't take part in the survey, although he makes a typical migrant profile. 6 years ago, he moved from Merkevelish to Almaty in order to study journalism. Walihan graduated a year ago, but he has still been unable to find a decent job to maintain a family. Life in Almaty is getting more difficult and expensive every day, but even though the city life pace is exhausting, I've never considered going back home. The experts' conclusions based on the survey results suggest that halting the migrants' inflow to Almaty is impossible. Instead, they propose reconsidering their residence registration aspects, which in turn will impede the process of receiving medical assistance or finding a high-paying job for internal migrants.
60 workers of the bus fleet number 3 in Almaty are on the verge of becoming homeless. The owner of the dormitory demands to vacate the premises by April 15th. It is planned to construct a 5-story educational center instead of the old building.
The laid-off workers of once largest bus fleet of Almaty, shut down 3 years ago, have been living in this dorm for about 12 years. No one ever tried to evict them before, but the new property owner demands the tenants to leave the premise. Dorm residents say they're tired of constantly fighting for their rights. The dorm documents were given to the company Almaty Elektrotrans, and its management now wants to evict us, since a 5-story building is planned to be built here. But we will defend our homes for the sake of our families. On top of all troubles, the tenants had to survive without electricity, water and central heating for 10 days so far. According to the local administration, these harsh measures were taken to make the residents pay off their utility debt of $12,000. The former employees of the bus fleet can cover the amount only by paying in installments. Also, it should be noted that tenants fully paid for full dorms repairs on their own, but a month later municipal workers smashed the building's windows and doors. All our children are sick because it is cold here. I recently left the hospital after spending 20 days there, while another woman was suffering high blood pressure not long ago, and it took the ambulance over 3 hours to reach us. We're simply forced out of here. Our kids cannot attend schools, being sick all the time. Just recently, one boy was taken to a hospital and is still there. Kobjar Dakenov, the director of the municipal transport company Almaty Elektrotrans, refuses to comment the situation on camera. He told the reporters in private that, in fact, tenants reside in the dorm illegally. The head of the organization says there are actually no bus fleet workers among them. The building will be taken down in March, and the second biggest taxi fleet in the city will be built there instead.
The decision of the Medeo District Court on the shutdown of Gulzhan.org website was left unchanged. It took just several minutes to the judge Beken Ahmediev to announce the verdict. The media website will be closed until March 21st. The 3-month ban ends on the eve of Nowruz holiday celebrations.
To recall, the website has been suspended on December 4th at the suit of the prosecutor of Bostandik district. Due to inaccurately identified recipient, the prosecutors of Medeo district had to involve 2 weeks later. That's when the online media source was banned for 3 months. According to attorney of Gulzhan Yergalieva, the plaintiff failed to provide any evidence. In the meantime, the website is shut down allegedly for campaigning for the unsanctioned rally, despite the fact that the editor Yergalieva has already been prosecuted for this. It's still not clear when would the site be up and running. Restoring may take much more time than the closing of the resource. None of the court's rulings attached to the case by prosecutors mention Yergalieva's website. There was only a banned rally and nothing more. In other words, I believe that prosecutors only gave us a favor. However, the court has already made the decision.
Kazakh linguists emphasize that the transfer to the Latin alphabet is not a political decision, but just an attempt to define the national identity. More details in the next report.
The Institute of Political Decisions is holding a chain of lectures with arguments in favor of the new Kazakh alphabet. According to the speaker, the Latin alphabet will determine the national character of the state. In fact, this isn't a political move at all, it is rather linguistic, says the candidate of philological sciences. This is an alphabet of globalization, a symbol of quality, scripts of the youth and the alphabet of the future. This issue wasn't raised by politicians. The linguists first raised this issue back in the early 20th century, in 1920s. The scientist Amankos Miktep has been researching runic scripts for 20 years. He offered the runic writing as a new alphabet. He's convinced that this is the closest thing to the Kazakhs of all existing alphabets. Yet even the author of the idea still fails to explain himself in runic. We need a transition to runic writings, which is our original script. This is our contribution to world culture. So why do we accept it? Currently, our culture isn't in decline. Therefore, we need to go back to our native culture. Think about the connection between generations, says the expert Nurjan Sadirbek. He doesn't support the idea of Latin alphabet at all. In order for future generations to be able to read what has been written by senior generations, we need to keep the Cyrillic alphabet. It is going to be something else when we fully switch to Latin or even while in transition. I imagine there will be so much of different mistakes in spelling, reading and much more. This may lead to degradation of society. Changing the Kazakh alphabet is one of the most discussed topics lately. According to many intellectuals, should the transition to the Latin alphabet contribute towards people literacy, the idea would be priceless. Therefore, the experts believe that it's important what to write and how to write it rather than which alphabet to use.
Kızılırda will soon have its own homemade oranges and even more. Students of Korkut Ata University, based on the research center Greenfield, launched the growing of tropical fruits.
110 future agronomists selected the best varieties of oranges, lemons, tangerines and even cherry for their scientific garden, already collecting their first crop. In spring, young scientists will be visiting the country's regions to give local farmers master classes. At the same time, the students are doing research and developing new fruit varieties. By hybridizing apples and pears, we get a new variety. We keep working on this regard, as we're planning to come up with completely new exotic fruits.
Kazakhstan needs more musicians, artists and actors. The high demand was emphasized by Nursultan Nazarbayev during the meeting with the provost of the National Art University, Ayman Musakhadjraeva.
The president had an appointment with the violinist on Tuesday in the Akorda. He congratulated her with 15th anniversary of her institution. Then he proceeded with his favorite topic of increasing cultural awareness among the residents of the capital. Astana needs not only administrative and residential buildings, it is also required to build cultural facilities, stressed Nazarbayev. Musakhadjraeva supported the view of the national leader. We're about to establish Astana Opera. The need for musicians throughout Kazakhstan will now be increasing. Here in Astana, as well as in Almaty, we need to train the specialists of all fields of culture, including all national classic film and theater workers, along with musicians.
This is all we have time for now. Thank you for watching and have a good day.